60 minutes, which includes about 15 minutes at the end for question and answers. My name is Damien Williams, and I'll be moderating today's webcast. If you are a regular on our webcast, and I recognize many of you, then please bear with me while I run through the introductory slides. If you are new to our webcast series today, then I hope we meet your expectations today. So, just a few housekeeping matters before we get started. To toggle between full screen and meeting mode, please click on the blue square button at the top right-hand side of your control panel. Phone lines are muted by default due to the large numbers on the webcast and the interference that would result. If you are having any technical difficulty during this webcast, please submit a question in the question and answer section. A recording of this presentation and a copy of the slides will be made available to you to share with your colleagues straight away within a couple of hours after the webcast. The webcast is global. I'm in Germany today, and we have presenters in the UK and the US. As always, we hope to seamlessly transition back and forth, but please forgive us if there are any small breaks in flow. And finally, for your information, it can take up to 3 seconds to transmit content to screen. Our objectives today are as follows: to engage you, to enable you to understand why enterprise learning is critical in today's climate, to hear how leading organizations that ensure success deploying SAP HCM learning technology, to understand what features are available with the latest technology SAP Enhancement Pack 4, to see some live demonstrations, and to hear about the future of SAP Enterprise Learning with an insight into the latest developments. Obviously, our most important objective is to ensure your time invested is well spent. Just a little bit about the two organizations that are sponsoring this event, ROC and Towers Watson. Towers Watson were formed from the merger of Towers Perrin and Watson Wyatt, two global professional services organizations, helping companies improve performance through effective people, risk, and financial management. With a deep and broad expertise in HR function effectiveness and advising more than 3/4 of the Fortune 1000 companies, we really will be benefiting from some true industry insight. ROC is a SAP accredited services partner with 100% focus on SAP human capital management, including payroll services, talent management, and of course enterprise learning, the subject of today's webcast. We have consultants delivering SAP HCM projects all over the world, helping companies achieve global harmonization through the use of SAP human capital management. ROC and Towers Watson have been collaborating since 2007, and last year entered into a strategic alliance to bring true end-to-end HCM expertise to organizations. Regarding our presenters today, today's speakers are Elise Friedman from Towers Watson, Simon Humphreys from ROC, and Chris McKellen from SAP. Elise is a senior consultant in the talent management group for Watson Wyatt worldwide. She has a strong history of successfully leading large-scale talent management and change initiatives in a wide range of Fortune 1000 and public sector clients. Her expertise includes all areas of talent management, as well as leadership development and training, change management, organizational risk assessment, and workforce planning. Elise has specific experience including financial services, manufacturing, utilities, high-tech, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, and federal agencies. And she's presented at conferences for the Society of Human Resources, the American Society of Training and Development, Linkage, World at Work, Association for Quality and Participation, Marcus Evans, and Terrapin. Simon is a senior solution architect at ROC, where he serves as the global lead for SAP HCM Talent Management. Some of you may remember Simon from a previous webcast, actually one of our most popular webcasts, Org Management, It's Time to Sort It Out, still available on ROC TV for viewing. Simon has over 15 years experience designing and implementing SAP HCM solutions, with experience in many industries including consumer goods, financial and professional services, media, public sector, and public security. Simon also presents regularly at conferences including the SAP Insider conferences and the SAP user groups in the UK and Europe. And finally, we are fortunate to have with us today one of SAP's most experienced enterprise learning members of staff. Chris has worked at SAP for several years in a variety of roles, including training customers and consultants on SAP HCM configuration and implementation. More recently, Chris has been responsible for SAP Enterprise Learning in the UK and works closely with colleagues around the SAP world to help shape and articulate SAP's offering in this area. Welcome Elise, Simon and Chris. Just by way of interaction, we will be having our usual 15-minute question and answer session at the end. Please feel free to submit your questions during the webcast. I will be collating those and essentially then moderating and providing those to our speakers at the end. For your information, your questions are not viewable by other attendees. Privacy is ensured. Technical questions will be addressed as soon as possible, and questions relating to today's topic will be addressed at the end. We have a survey that will pop up at the end of this webcast, and we would ask for your time. It's just 8 questions, and in return we will send you a copy of Towers Perrin's Executive Summary survey results. The webcast is one of a series from ROC and Towers Perrin. They run on the last Thursday of every month, so the next one will be on Thursday the 25th of March 2010, where we address the topic of self-services and reaching out to a wider audience. Now, without any further delay, let's move on to today's presentation, and over to you, Elise, to set the scene.
Thank you so much, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are connecting from. This portion of the discussion is really going to be about what are the business reasons for investing in learning and development when basically most organizations are still at least in cost containment mode, if not actually looking at ways to continue to cut cost. And so why should organizations, what's the value and the return on continuing to invest in leadership and development? Also going to spend a little time talking about some of the trends we're seeing in leadership and development, and also how to get the most value out of the organization's leadership and development dollars. So if we move into the key business drivers for learning and development, there are a variety of reasons and some real, again, strategic ones why organizations should be investing in this. Number one is to support business growth. It's obviously been an interesting economy for the last couple of years, and I think that a lot of organizations have seen reductions in turnover because employees haven't had quite as much or as many options. But the truth is your top talent is always at risk, and there's been a lot of research that's been done saying employee engagement has dropped a lot, which has a direct translation to business results, and especially in the top performers. So learning and development is actually a way to increase employee retention and employee engagement. It's also important that organizations are always focusing on the future. In order to focus on the future, you need to determine what skills are needed by your talent in the organization and to invest in making sure that people have those skills and development. So learning and development can really help you improve your internal candidate pool and your bench strength. So as the business changes, you've got the people ready to move into your key roles. And also to really grow more leaders within. When you talk about engagement and retention, when employees understand that there's opportunities for them to grow and move, and if not always up, at least continuing to build their own personal toolkit, that gives employees a reason to want to stay and continue to contribute to your organization. If we move on to learning and development trends, we're seeing a number of things that I think have kind of shifted and changed, and a number of things that continue to stay the same. Number one, even more so than ever, it's extremely important that you maintain strong executive support and commitment to leadership and development. And and talking to organizations around the world who are doing these things, they've had their CEO tell the heads of the training that I need this more than ever. I need to make our employees stronger, better, faster, quicker, and we need to do this more creatively. So it's important that you have executive engagement and support in this, and that your leaders are very verbal about their support. We also really need to make sure that we're looking at our organization closely and making sure that we're factoring in needs of across the organization. So obviously companies tend to invest sometimes a lot in their senior leaders, but sometimes it's those first-line supervisors who can have a huge impact on your organization. So making sure we're looking at critical roles and critical people and investing our dollars wisely in that area. We're also seeing more and more of a blended approach to learning, and that's also one of the ways that technology is a huge enabler in the learning and development area. There's so many more creative ways that we can educate and train people than, you know, in the old days. If I think about even 5 and certainly 10 years ago, a lot of the training was you go into a classroom and you sit there and somebody tells you something and you walk out hopefully changed. But these days we're using a lot more creative methodologies, a lot more creative approaches with technology as an enabler to really help both deliver training and also reinforce the learning and the new skills. And then also the other thing that's more important than ever is really showing that there is a return on investment for the training that we have delivered. And there's a number of ways in organizations have done that, but making sure you really are measuring the impact of your training and, again, sharing the impact of the training with the organization so folks understand the value and why they should be freeing up employees to go and or the kind of results they can expect after the training. If we move on to the next area, a lot of organizations still struggle with the make versus buy. And I think for a long time, a lot of organizations were continuing to bring in leaders from the outside and then actually really struggling with that because those leaders didn't have the internal knowledge and the understanding of the culture to always get things done in a way that really worked in the organization. So, you know, a lot of organizations have started to shift and still, of course, looking to bring in outside talent when and as needed, but also looking to really grow and develop talent within so that they have more leaders and, again, can improve things like retention and engagement as we talked about previously. Being that budgets are tight everywhere, more and more organizations, if we move to the next page, are trying to figure out, well, how do we really focus our learning and development dollars, and how do we really make sure we're getting the maximum results from what we are spending? And basically, we encourage our clients to really start with your high potential. So look across your organization and see who are the folks you think have, are really adding a lot of value in what they're doing in the organization and have a long future. Those are the folks that you should be investing in. Also, emerging managers are another key group that, again, what they do directly impacts both up and down in the organization. So investing in them is always an excellent idea. But you also need to look at the pivotal roles in your organization, the roles that really keep your organization moving and that the organization would come to a grinding halt if that role no longer existed, and make sure that you're providing the training and education that those folks need to be most successful. And then there's always specialty areas, as we still do continue to struggle with shortages in some key engineering and science areas. More and more organizations are looking at feeder pools and developing more junior talent to go into more specialized roles, and obviously learning and development plays a key role in that. Then let's talk about some of the learning and development delivery components. As I mentioned, there's been a lot of transition from the most typical, instructor-led training, and there's still plenty of that. And technology is a great supporter with everything from registration and managing it and post-surveys and pre-surveys for that area. But also more and more organizations are going to things like mentoring programs and coaching and job shadowing and using social media and online collaboration tools, again, to either both conduct the learning in the first place, but especially also to reinforcement. So an ask the expert type thing, blogs on certain topics. And these are ways that actually, for very low cost, if you actually have the right technology, that you really can make your organization into a learning organization. Moving to the next area, so what do we really know about learning and development, and what does this mean when we're thinking about, again, investing in learning development? Adults learn by doing, which again is even more of a support for programs like the job shadowing, we call action learning, where people are taking a business problem and you're gathering a group of team members together from across the organization and working on that problem and presenting their recommendations. But those type of things are a very powerful way for adults to learn. They also learn, obviously, through others and through teaching. So when we think about organizing our learning and development, we need to keep that in mind as we're designing our programs for the future. And variety is key. Everybody doesn't want to read and learn the same way, so there should be things where people can, again, go on and do blogs, to read self-study guides, to do that instructor-led training, to taking e-learning. All the different mechanisms are key to really have a robust and effective learning development program that produces the kind of business value that we need our learning development to produce. And learning and development should be continuous and not a series of episodes, and supported by your other talent management processes. So if you say learning is key in your organization, make sure that's something you're evaluating in your performance management process. Make sure it's something that you're reinforcing through succession planning by creating development plans for your future leaders on how they're going to get to having the skills and abilities to the roles that you eventually want them to to take over, because learning doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's only one of many talent management and people processes in your organization. Again, we should be scrutinizing it and making sure it's achieving results, and if not, get rid of it and find something that does. So really making sure that we are, taking a hard look at what we're doing. And mentors is another key thing. A lot of the business leaders, when they talk about the key reason that they've been as successful as they have, it's because of having a mentor to help them guide them through their career and or through the organization. And as I mentioned previously too, senior leadership always plays a key role in the effectiveness of this. On the next page is kind of a continuation about important considerations for effective learning and development. We've talked about a number of these things, but must be, again, many more than just training events. Having the senior executives, live and visible, and I'm actually rolling out a large program right now, and one of the things is that they've got the CEO who's done a video talking about the importance of this area and what we're training on, but then at every single session, one of the top senior executives will be there to kick it off, and in most cases stay through the entire session. So that's showing visible support of the importance of this training. Creating the comprehensive experiences, and this goes back to the variety. So if you're trying to develop your sales force, you might have instructor-led training and the mentoring and special projects they work on, and some e-learning courses that they're taking to register. But again, it's an overall experience in development. Just-in-time training. Don't train someone on something they're not going to use for 6 to 9 months, and make sure that even once they start using it, they have easy ways to reinforce it, which again, technology can provide through the Ask the Expert or the posting of job aids and other reinforcement materials. Link the ROI to your business results, and make sure that what you're designing is adaptable and that you're continuing to evaluate it, because the business needs will change, therefore your learning and development needs will change as well. So how is learning and development used in high-performing companies? Again, it's really used through the employment life cycle. It is a selling feature when you are hiring in new employees and looking to attract and keep the best talent. The fact that you're a learning organization and that you offer a lot of development. It plays a key role, obviously, in career management and succession planning. How do we get someone from A to Z? Well, we need to have a thoughtful way of doing that, and learning development is obviously key. It's also an important part of rewards. I know in a number of organizations I've consulted with, their high-potential leadership programs are highly in demand. People want to be involved, and it's considered a real honor to be selected into the program. So it is reward, just like bonuses can be a reward. And also, it helps participate in your workforce planning. As you're looking at the talent you're going to need, then you need to look at both external hiring and then building the internal thing. And learning and development, like all your other talent management practices, really need to be supported by your culture, your capabilities, change management, and linked to your business drivers. Again, it's really all about building skills the business needs to be effective. Learning and development, even I think more so than a lot of the other talent management practices, technology is really key. Basically, without technology, it is hard to both manage and roll out a really robust learning and development program. It helps you do things like track employee skills and development needs, and really look at your organization and see where your gaps are and what you need to develop to. It provides data that the organization can use to make important business decisions, like who's the best fit when there's a sudden opening. It makes learning and development available 24/7, to folks. So again, they can invest the time when they've got the time to develop their skill sets. And basically, it automates a heck of a lot of administrative tasks in the learning and development area, everything from registering participants and tracking attendance to completing pre and post technology. So, to kind of, sum it up, basically, learning development is extremely important to our organization's success, and technology is a key enabler of that. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Simon Humphreys, who is going to talk about the, the learning enterprise and how SAP can support that.
Thank you, Elise. Welcome, everybody. What I would like to do is build on some of those points now, and particularly look at how technology can help support that business process. And we'll later have a very brief demonstration that just sort of touches on some of the points I'm making throughout the presentation today. So if we look at the end-to-end business process, which should be starting to appear on your screens at the moment, it's usually initiated by the identification of training needs. We can do this through individual employee appraisals, for example, which are helping to develop our employee skills, or we can look at it from a company perspective, if we need to react to different market conditions, changes in legislation, or potentially we've purchased some new equipment that requires training for our employees to be able to use that. This demand for training can then be analysed, and we can look against the training budgets we've got, the resources we have in place, or potentially that we need to acquire to be able to deliver that against that demand. If we do in fact need new courses, then we can also design and deliver those in-house, or potentially we can look to outside to buy in that content or that experience. Having done that, we then want to look at planning and scheduling our courses. Often this is an annual or a quarterly type process that establishes the courses in place, and that frees up the employees and the managers to then go in and do their bookings, our administrators to help with the waitlist management, and so on in the day-to-day type of course management. Key, again, a point that Elise was raising was really measuring the effectiveness of that training as well. So we really want to look at how deeply we can evaluate the success of the training, how well it's retained by employees, how effective is our testing mechanisms, and how well received is the training. So we have a variety of different ways of evaluating and also reporting on the effectiveness of the delivery, but also then make sure that our employee records are kept up to date and all of the necessary skills and competencies are recorded onto our employee records. Now to do that, we've got SAP HCM Enterprise Learning, and that functionality is very rich, and we'll just have a look at some of the capabilities here from a system perspective first. So if we imagine that SAP HCM is more than just enterprise learning, we have very tight integration to areas such as performance management, where we can do that training needs analysis. We have our financial systems for controlling the costs and the billing processes that go on. And we can also link in, for example, to things like succession planning to make sure our employees are developing for positions in the future. We have our learning management system itself, which allows us to track and control all of the course administration. We have a learner portal, which acts as a learning gateway for the user and helps empower them to drive their own development. And we just have a little look at that a little later on in the deck. We also have tools available to help us manage and deploy the e-learning content. We have testing author tool sets, which help us monitor, evaluate, and test our learners, and virtual classroom capability, which is online learning, but with potentially a remote instructor who then leads the people through the content. And we underpin all of this with some powerful reporting and analytics capability. If we now think of this from the user side of things, we can see that how the solution is underpinning that with the different stakeholders in the process of training. So let's look at a few examples, not looking at every single one. Hi, I think we might have lost the sound, so apologies for that. We just had a little technical hitch, so I'll carry on. So Elise talked earlier about the empowerment of employees, and the Learner Portal in particular helps the employee drive their own training development with giving them the capability of doing things for themselves. We'll have a look at that portal in a second, but we can also influence how an employee learns with content adapting to their preferred learning strategy. So if a person prefers example-based learning or exercise-based learning, then we can accommodate this preference by recording it in the Enterprise Learner Portal, and then we can adjust the content accordingly. This should ensure that the messages within the training is better retained by the people. We can engage our managers a little more in the process as well, through approval of bookings, visibility of employee progress, and how that affects the achievement of the employee objectives which might have been set in the appraisals. Our instructors and administrators also have a web-based portal access so that they can manage the delivery of the courses. These portals are easy to use, they can be personalized for each user so that they can operate quickly and effectively, and we'll have a look at one of those administrator portals within our demonstration. So I promised a look at the Learner Portal. Here it is, or a snapshot of that at least. And we look at the screen split up in several different sections. So at the top center of the screen, and again right in front of the eye line of the user, is a little messaging area. And this is where we can actually push through and nudge the user and the learner with various system messages, such as a key skill might be due to expire and needs a refresher course or some corrective action just to get that back on track. So this ensures that the employees themselves have got the necessary information. They can use that area to then look at proactively managing their skills and keeping them up to date, and hopefully then reducing any downtimes in the workforce. In the middle of the screen we can see our training bookings, including classroom bookings and e-learning content itself, and we can launch e-learning courses from here. On the left-hand side we have services that can be used by the employee, such as viewing the course catalogue and doing skills gap analysis, and again we'll have a little look at that in the demonstration. Now, I mentioned earlier about virtual learning. Here's an example of the virtual learning classroom, which is using the Adobe Connect technology. This classroom would be launched by employees and the instructor from their relative portals. The instructor then has a number of tools to lead the remote-based learners through the course, including running tests and polls, encouraging chat and questions about the content, providing supporting materials and handouts, as well as monitoring attendance and participation. Following the course, we can use SAP collaboration tools to continue and encourage dialogue between the learners themselves as a community, but also with the tutor as and when required. This helps really ensure that the learning content is understood well, but goes beyond what can be achieved purely in just a classroom. As a result, our learners are developed more fully. So if we now have a look at a very brief demonstration, I've got a couple of very small scenarios here, and we think of our employee and our administrator in this example. So our employee is going to log on. They're going to identify a skill gap, through the Learner Portal, and they're going to request a place on the course. The administrator is going to then complete that training request, and will then also complete the course that happened last week, just making sure that the necessary employee records and attendance records were kept up to date. So if I flip over now to my demonstration. And what we should now be seeing on our screen momentarily. There we go. So we'll log in first as our employee. Okay, and we're going to be taken into our Learner Portal, which is personalized for me as a user. And from here I'll see that view that we were just looking at, the messages and notes area of the screen, the My Bookings, and I can see I'm already booked on a couple of e-learning courses there, and we have a services panel down the right hand side. Now what we will do is we're going to launch a profile matchup. We're going to compare the skills that are identified against my position versus the skill levels that I currently hold. And we'll actually find a bit of a gap that we need to correct. So we'll look at the first aid at work, and we can see there that I'm required to be at a good level of skill, but I'm actually have missing qualification for that at the moment. So by clicking on that item, the information is then going to tell me that I have a classroom-based course available to me to book on that, which will get my skill level up to the necessary level of proficiency. I can click on that now, and that brings me up information about the course, such as where it is, how many days it is running for, and so on, and how much it might cost. So let's book on a course. We found one that's coming up soon. That again just reminds me of the schedule and when I'll be expected to turn up, who's running the course there, and I can request a place on that course. Other courses, for example, may actually just go straight through to the manager for approval and I automatically get my place. But in this example, it's going to require the administrator to acknowledge my request and fulfill that request by booking me directly onto the course. So that request has been submitted now to the administrator. So what we'll do is we'll log on as the administrator and just have a look at that request, how it's come through. Here we'll see the new web-enabled front end for the administrator, which is new in Enhancement Package 4. Here I can see various activities that I can proceed with, and I can, by default, I come into looking at the courses that are running this week. Here's that First Aid at Work course, and I can look at who's booked on there. Now, there's already 3 people booked on there, but also my request as well. So what I will do is have a look at that request. It looks fine to me. So yes, we'll put our employee onto the course. Now because we've already reached the ideal number of people on that course, it's just giving me a warning message to say it's okay to do this, but I just need to make sure that I really fulfill that by making it an essential booking. So I'll do that now, and that will send a message to the employee to say your place is now reserved on the course. And here are the joining instructions, for example. Now, because we've put this very late in the day and we're feeling particularly generous, we're going to let this person come on the course free. Typically, it would have cost them £150, but we'll give it to them for free this time. Now, while I'm here as an administrator, I can also follow up on a course that happened last week. So just showing here that, in fact, the qualification itself is going to be imparted First Aid at Work, and it's going to give it us a good proficiency level. So let's have a look at a course from last week now. We want to make sure that we record who turned up to the course and did they fulfill a satisfactory performance during the course to gain the qualification. So here's my course. I have 3 participants on that course. I can individually confirm their attendance if I wish to, or in fact I can just mass select them and say that they all were present on the course. In fact they were. However, the bad news was one of them wasn't really paying attention and didn't really, in my view, perform to the required standards to gain the qualification. So that's a touch unfortunate, but to improve our reporting capability at the other side of that, I also want to give a reason why I'm failing them from that course. And that all gets recorded and can be reported upon. Okay, so this is now going to impart a good proficiency level of skill onto 2 of those employee records and a fail record onto the 3rd. And that's now done that. So what I'd like to do is just return now to the presentation. And just briefly cover off what's coming in new. Up and there. There we go, sorry about that. What's coming up, what's been released recently in terms of the SAP Enhancement Package methodology and what's coming up in the future. I'm only going to touch briefly on this because I do want to hand this over very soon to Chris from SAP, but I just wanted to make people aware that there are probably two enhancement packages that are of most relevance for Learning Solution at the moment, which are Enhancement Package 2 and Enhancement Package 4. They contained quite a lot of functionality which extend the basic capability of the product, so including things like the e-learning capability, those different portals that we see for instructors, learners and administrators, as well as other nice-to-have functionality around the reporting capability. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is hand over to Chris, and he'll just be able to elaborate what's in that Enhancement Package 4 in a little more detail, and then proceed to look at what's coming up in the pipeline from SAP.
Thanks very much, Simon. Yes, very interesting. So, hello to everyone who's online. I work for SAP, and my plan for this webinar is just to take you through a little bit of the functionality that is delivered. So, to begin with, I'm going to just talk through what is new, so what's actually delivered in the SAP product suite today, and then go on and talk a little bit about what's planned in terms of the future vision, both for the SAP Enterprise Learning solution and also for how that would fit into the wider talent management suite. And I think it's important to point out that Enterprise Learning is, and I think we've made this point already, both Elise and Simon, that Enterprise Learning is not something that is delivered necessarily in isolation. Actually, the wider talent management suite, talking about things like looking at skills and competencies and linking those into performance management, is really important when considering any of these talent management strategies. Okay, so what actually is new in terms of what's delivered? One of the main things that we delivered with Enhancement Pack 4 for SAP was actually a training administration portal, and we saw a bit of that a moment ago when Simon did a short demo. Really what that is about is about providing the high volume transactional type work to administrators in an easy-to-use web-based interface where they don't have to jump between multiple screens, they don't have to jump between lots of different functions. Everything that they need to do in terms of that high-volume administrative work is there in one easy-to-use interface. And we've seen an example of some of the things they can do there, processing follow-ups to courses, so a training administrator can look at who's attended a particular training event, and I think it's important to point out that when we talk about a training event, it doesn't have to be a formal training class. It can be all kinds of events. So we've seen a lot of professional services organisations looking at using this kind of functionality to confirm CPD activities, for example, which may be something as simple as attending a talk or reading a book even. But training administrators can do that kind of course follow-up, recording information back into the core HR record directly from this training administrator portal. A couple of other things we've produced to make the task of administrating learning activities a little bit easier, including on the side you can see here something called rapid content publishing. A lot of our customers were telling us that when they look at traditional web-based training, so the kind of simple online e-learning type stuff, they didn't want to spend a lot of time having to publish and version content. Sometimes they just want to get content into the system and out very quickly, and we've developed a rapid content publishing capability which enables that to go out really with just a couple of clicks. If you've got a piece of content, you can get it out there straight away. And I think that plays back to some of the trends that Elise was talking about around corporate messaging and the pace of change and being able to get the return on the investment for learning very quickly. We've also developed actually something for more of our large global customers where they may not have access to large and very quick internet connections. On the slide here it's described as offline course distribution, and that is some clever technology to actually enable people to deliver e-learning to people who don't have a very high-speed internet connection. So we found for a lot of our global customers, it's all right if you're in the London or the New York office, but if you're out in a very remote location, perhaps in Africa or Southeast Asia, how could you participate in the learning experience? And so offline course distribution allows files or even sort of media, so discs or pen drives to be sent out to people and produced, but still tracked as if it was online learning.
Chris, could I just interrupt you there? It's Simon. We're getting a few comments from people on the line that they can't hear you very well. Could you just speak up a touch?
Sure, yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Hopefully you can all hear me. I'm trying to speak as loud as possible. I'm actually in the SAP office at Heathrow in London, so hopefully our phone system is doing the job. So I was just talking about some of the capabilities delivered with Enhancement Pack 4 for learning. You can see those on the slide, which hopefully is in front of you all. Really, just to recap briefly, the main themes are around ease of use, and that goes both for training administrators, for managers, and also for actually learners who would be accessing content in low bandwidth locations. So I talked about the training administrator portal and some of the capabilities that delivered around ease of use for high volume administrative transactions, rapid content publishing, which is aimed at content authors, giving them the ability to actually deliver content quickly and easily, and offline course distribution, which is some clever technology to enable people in low bandwidth connections to attend e-learning whilst offline. A couple of other things here. In terms of manager services, we've always delivered services for managers throughout the HCM suite, but with the latest release of Enterprise Learning, we've allowed much deeper integration across HR, and managers can now choose to take control directly of some of the administration or planning activities for members of their team. So, for example, managers can actually mandate certain items of training or certain types of training directly from their manager's self-service portal. They can also actually perform some of the administration tasks for their staff if they wish, so actually performing some of the booking capabilities. Linking in with managers, the integration with performance management, so the appraisal process has been enhanced greatly. So that ranges from simple capabilities to be able to book training, a specific piece of training or a specific type of training from within an appraisal during the performance management cycle, all the way through to actually being able to use the performance management or appraisal documents to actually perform a profile match, a skills gap analysis against an employee's current skills, current role, or even their future role, as determined through some of the succession planning capabilities within SAP HCM. And that's a very useful and required development, I think, to give a more rounded and complete talent management capability. So it doesn't matter if we're mid-appraisal cycle, we can still have integration directly with learning processes from the performance documents. And that gives us the capability of starting to link succession and career planning directly into the learning cycle. And I think that chimes with some of the points Elise made earlier on in this call, which were around actually being able to nurture and retain talent through wider talent management activities. Final thing you'll see on the slide here, or there's two final things, which are around concurrent employment. So that is aimed at global organizations, perhaps where you have people on international secondments, or often in the UK within public sector you have people with multiple contracts, and they can actually go into enterprise learning and choose different learning activities driven by the competency requirements of different roles that they hold either nationally or internationally. So a simple scenario there would be perhaps to say that when you're on a secondment, your role and your skills requirements might be slightly different from when you were working from your home country. Finally, we have improved some of the business intelligence data sources, specifically around course appraisals. So we're talking there about additional analytical capabilities to be able to report on training return on investment and employees' perceptions of training that they've received, and that's something that you can do immediately post-event or slightly afterwards. Just to be flip forward to the next slide, what I'd like to do is just share with you some of the vision for SAP Enterprise Learning in terms of future developments and what we're planning to deliver in the next release and what the vision is going forward ahead of that. So we've talked about sort of clarity and insight being two sort of key themes already delivered, And actually, in the next version of Enterprise Learning, which is slated for release midway through this year, we're actually delivering much greater enhancements to the learning analytics. The main theme around that is to provide organizations, talent specialists, senior managers with more insight into the effectiveness of training and also the payback on training, which of course is pretty critical when designing these kind of programs. You'll see that it says on our slide here we're delivering learning performance analytics and business BW, which is business warehouse or business objects dashboarding. Some of you may be aware that SAP acquired business objects about 2 years ago now, which was at the time and still is the market leader for predictive analytics, delivering very easy to use UI dashboards, and some of those are being developed specifically around learning to look at things like compliance, sustainability reporting, and really just general performance of learning, and those are due to be delivered towards the middle of this year. There's a lot of development work planned in terms of the vision for the next release, which will be around January 2011, and we're looking at a whole load of themes there, but some of this really linking in again to what Elise had mentioned earlier on. So firstly, we're looking at enhancing the learner portal, so providing a simplified user interface for the learners, developing a wider variety of web services for integration across SAP and to other non-SAP products, and actually looking at ways to integrate informal learning workspaces. So things, at the moment, you can already integrate to things like wikis and blogs within Enterprise Learning. What we're looking at is to actually looking at some of the technology that underpins that. So looking at things like RSS and Atom feeds as a way of automatically taking some of the formalized data stored in SAP HCM and linking that automatically to different types of devices, perhaps into things like Microsoft Office or SharePoint, lots of other types of sort of social business software. The other thing that you'll see, which is a big development for us in terms of the planning, is much greater support for external learners. So developing e-commerce capabilities to enable all customers to actually resell learning services out to suppliers and partners. Obviously, we're going to have a question and answer session, so if you've got questions about any of that, I'll be happy to answer them. But that's the vision for the product as it goes forward. And the other thing I'd like to say is that one of the big trends that we're seeing is around actually speed to develop this kind of stuff. So one of the things that's very nice is to see organizations like ROC and others, in fact, delivering very, very rapid implementation packages. So customers of SAP who in the past have maybe thought these can be long, complex projects, there is a route to be able to do this stuff very quickly through taking advantage of package services that are out there. Okay, so I think that's all I've got to say for this session. Unless there are any questions later.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Simon, and thank you, Elise. Apologies to everyone if we have had some technical challenges with sound quality. Hopefully everyone can hear me as we go into the question and answer session. And I have actually received quite a few questions, and I think I did get one just at the end of your presentation, Elise, so I feel that it's only fair that I should throw this one over to you first, which was, I need to now find it, of course. Basically, you made reference to the high potentials being essentially 20% of the company's overall leader population, and the question was, is that 20% of the current leader population, and how is leader defined? The percentage seems high, as the question has been asked.
Sure, and actually, I think the slide might have been a little bit misleading. I don't know that I would say that typically. I think 20% is high for the number of 20. It can be considered high, and again, it depends on how you define a population. Typically, with a lot of organizations, they they start succession planning and their high potentials looking at kind of their director level and above. However, more and more organizations are really expanding that to pivotal roles and taking it down to the manager level. I think if your population is broader than 20% is actually appropriate. If your population is more limited, then I think that you could actually plan for more like 10 to 15%.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Elise. Simon, I've got a couple of questions I'm just going to that I think I can just sort of send your way at the same time, if that's all right. They relate to implementation.
Okay.
Actually, one is that an organization has training and events already. Do they need to re-implement this in order to take advantage of enterprise learning? And the second question is from someone who's on version 4.7.
Yeah.
And they would like to know whether they can use the latest functionality.
Okay, no problem. So taking those in order. So if you already have training and events management, you don't need to re-implement. The product has been developed to take advantage of the existing training and event functionality and build upon that. So when you want to have the new features, new functionality for the e-learning, for example, or the virtual learning, that can add on top of the training and event management functionality that you may already have. Now, that question may be coming from somebody who is on, say, version 4.7 as well. What you need to be on for the latest functionality is the EC6 platform. That gives you a couple of options as to how to get there. You can either upgrade your existing 4.7 platform to EC6 and then look at adding the enhancement packages that best suit the needs that you're looking for, or you can do what some of our customers do, which is implement learning on a separate EC6 server and then integrate that back into your 4.7 solution for the master record update, for example, and to integrate, say, to finance or the other things. That then downplays the need of the large technical upgrade and lets you get in a solution very quickly and very effectively. And we found that a lot of organizations actually prefer to go down that route.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Simon. Chris, if I may, I'd like to throw a couple of questions at you, and you did say that I could do that. One is in relation to the email calendaring systems, in the sense of, in terms of integrating with those. What email calendar systems, i.e. Outlook or Lotus Notes, does the SAP ESO integrate into?
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me, Damien.
Yep, it's coming through loud and clear.
Yeah, it integrates with both of those. So it uses a standard message format to send out email notifications, and that's built off the back of the SAP workflow engine. And that is not just for email, but also for calendar entry. So typically the simple scenario we would see is, as somebody registers to a specific event, the system would send them an automatic email notification. It may also send an email notification to their manager or managers, and as an attachment it would send a calendar entry with that.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much. Simon, in terms of is the demonstration that we were seeing, I've had a question as to whether that is the user-friendly interface being shown on the slide the default that comes with SAP, or is it an extra cost? And traditionally, the SAP user interface has not been as attractive as some other solutions. So I guess the one that you showed was. Perhaps you can answer that.
Yeah, of course I can. And I think Chris and myself would be the first to acknowledge that in the past, I think that's a valid comment, that the user interface needed a little bit of tweaking to make that a bit more user-friendly, and that's been a key focus area of SAP over the last few months and years. What we saw in the demonstration there is the Enhancement Package 4 web-enabled administrator portal, and what we saw was standard screens. We haven't spent days, weeks, and months adding custom development to put that on top of what you were seeing. What you were seeing was effectively out-of-the-box functionality. But I would stress that that's in the latest Enhancement Package 4. So if you're at that level in terms of technical platform, that's exactly what you'll see.
Okay. Thank you. Chris, could you perhaps further elaborate on the third-party software integration via web services? If that's not too technical to throw at you.
No, that's fine. Yeah, there's a number of different ways that integration can be handled. So there are standard web services delivered already. There's going to be further web services enabled with the coming enhancement packs. And essentially that's just a way of providing a kind of standard way of communication between different systems. We know that a lot of our customers use hosted systems for e-learning sometimes, particularly in specialist areas. And it just makes the system a bit more open. It's really developments that have been driven through the open architecture of NetWeaver for the last sort of, 3 or 4 years really. There are lots of ways of doing that, lots of ways of accomplishing integration across the SAP suite out into different applications. And we know that learning is an area where, if I can take an example from the UK, the police forces, all the police forces in the UK, for example, have their own online specialist police force training, and they may want to integrate that with some more generic business back office type training, and they can do that utilizing the NetWeaver stack that sits beneath Enterprise Learning. So it's all standard capabilities.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just going to rush through. We've got a lot of questions in, and I'm just sort of trying to keep up with them. Sorry, apologies. Simon, over to you. There's a question on SAP standard functionality. Is there a way for employees to self-report training classes that they attended to be recorded in SAP LSO? This is an organisation that's looking for a standard functionality where in the back-end SAP automatically records these self-reported trainings with the course name, duration, start, etc.
There are options to meeting that requirement. I mean, I would, off the top of my head, I'd be thinking about some sort of front end through employee self-service, so that they can actually record that they've either been on a training course or they bring some skill with them from another organisation. And I think primarily we'd be looking to ensure that the training history is therefore updated as a result of that, so the reporting picks up that extra information, but also that they get any necessary qualifications that they feel they already have. And again, we would also want to make sure that, if necessary, there was some sort of manager involvement in there, just to make sure that people aren't saying they've got things that they haven't got. But there's a number of different options to achieve that, and we have a number of organisations where we've delivered solutions to achieve that.
Okay, thank you. Another quick one, perhaps. Is the interface available? I imagine this is the user interface. Is the interface available in multiple languages as a standard offering? Might be Simon or Chris, sorry.
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, it is available in, I think, about 30 languages as standard. The interface that we saw today, demoed by Simon, there's a full list of those on our website. I can't name all the languages off the top of my head, but yeah, it's supported in about 30 languages as standard, and that's the list that SAP adds to. I mean, obviously, as a global solutions provider, we know the importance of developing this stuff in multiple languages. For example, simplified Chinese is supported as standard, and we've got other character sets as well, just rather than the sort of European, Latin character sets.
Great.
So, yeah, it is.
Great. I've got one more question for you, Chris, and I don't think you're necessarily going to go into full detail because I have to close off, but I thought it was a very interesting question. It's from an organisation saying small bite training delivered over smart devices / phones is a big initiative for us. How will LSO support the creation, delivery, and tracking? I guess can SAP LSO do that, and perhaps we can then follow up with a more detailed answer.
Yeah, just very quickly, I mean, that's not something that we've delivered at the moment. It's definitely a trend. It's definitely something we're looking at. It's not delivered as standard, but SAP has announced, sorry, got a bit of interference there. SAP did announce last year a partnership with Sybase to enable any Business Suite application on BlackBerry or iPhone. So the technology's there. We haven't written it into the product at the moment, but it will be coming, no doubt, as part of future developments. One of the things I'll just add very briefly, Damien, is that we haven't seen too much of the virtual classroom capability in this particular demo. That is something that can be enabled via mobile phones as of today. and that is supported. So there are ways of doing that, particularly with recorded sessions as well.
Fantastic. I mean, perhaps we can schedule that for a follow-up webcast, because that sounds like an interesting topic in itself. To close off, I'd really like to thank today's speakers, Elise, Simon, and Chris. Really appreciate your time today. Also like to thank all our listeners for participation in today's webcast. We hope you found it a good use of your time. Links to a recording of the webcast will be sent to everyone. And if you'd like to find out any more on these subjects, then please contact us. Contact details are on the slides in front of you. And in due course, we will be sending out some information on how you could get an SAP Enterprise Learning solution up and running quickly and cost-effectively. As I said earlier on, following the webcast, an email will be sent to you with a link to a brief survey. Your feedback is much appreciated in return for the completing this short 8-question survey. We would like to offer you the Towers Watson Executive Summary Survey results. This concludes today's webcast presentation today. Thank you and goodbye.